Alrighty guys, this is snugsonblitz and I'm back with another video for you today. Sub, I believe, asked me if I could maybe do a review of tech tree lines that are good for newer players, aka noobs. Been meaning to do it for a while, just haven't gotten around to it. Had a little time today, so I figured why not. I find that most people who join this game when they first start out tend to choose their own country's tanks if they exist in the game. So for example, a Chinese person might take a Chinese tech tree to grind. A Japanese person might go for a Japanese tank. An American goes for an American tank. Is that always the wisest decision? No, absolutely not. Why? Because some tank lines, I should say, are easier to grind than others. Some tank lines have what I call weakest links, that somewhere along the line you're going to be frustrated. And that's going to be tough to deal with. I mean, let me give you an example here. We're looking at the American tech tree here, and this line here, the Patton. Now, one of the things about this line right here is that the tanks play pretty similarly. So they're all mediums. They all can do hull down to a certain extent. Some of them have better turrets than others. Some are a little bit faster, some are a little bit slower, but essentially the playstyle is the same. So if you can get one tank to play well, you can probably play the other tanks quite decently as well. But this tank line, the T-57 heavy line, is a little tricky. Why? Well, you start off with light tanks here, then you move into a medium tank here, and lastly you end up with a heavy tank. So it's very, very different playstyle. Lights with their special camo, you might think, wow, my tanks are invisible. Next thing you know, your tanks are not invisible. You're like, why is that? And then you move into a tank and you think, why is this so slow? So this is a little bit frustrating, I think, for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. They need consistency. So the tech tree lines that I'm going to recommend are pretty consistent throughout. Now, I can't do 100% because that's just impossible. There are not enough tech tree lines like that I think really play well for new players. But I'm going to give my best shot. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that the Chinese line is absolutely not noob friendly. It is a tough line. Why is that? Well, sorry, they're all tough lines. Why is that? Well, their gun depression is pretty much non-existent, especially for the meds. The lights have no armor. They're very tough tanks to be able to manufacture shots. If you play these tanks first, you'll be like, how can everybody hit me and I can't shoot back? That's why you have to put your tank in a dangerous position, and they don't. And you'll be frustrated by that. So I would definitely stay away from all the Chinese tech tree tanks. Likewise, I would stay away from the Japanese tech tree. Now, granted, the Type 71 line is a pretty standard tech tree line to grind, pretty similar armor, which is the X factor, as I always said. But I just don't think they're very good tanks. Before the Type 68 and 71 were OP, now they've been kind of nerfed, so they're just, I mean, the Type 71 is good, and Type 68 is good, but I think the grind is rough. So, yeah, I'm not going to say go for any of these. So, you know, there's a lot of choices in this game. When I started, there were only 4 lines: the American, the German, the Soviet, and the British. Now you got 7 lines, 7 different, nations, and this nation is a mix of different countries. You've got Swedish, you've got Italian, you've got Polish. So it's tough. You know, choices make it hard. You know, the more choices you have, you're always wondering, am I going to make the right decision, or am I not going to make the right decision? If there are only a few choices, it's easy to just say, okay, I'll just move on to the next line, because you've only got a few to choose from. But in this one, you know, if you go from one bad choice to another bad choice, it's rough. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you my top 8. I decided to cut it down to 8 tech tree lines that I think are worthy of consideration, and then we'll go down in order. So I'm going to tell you my 8 tech tree lines that I think I would recommend for new players, and then we'll rank them afterwards. So I'm going to start off here with the European line. Of this line, of this tech tree, there are 2 that I think stand out. The new one, the VZ55, is one I wouldn't recommend. They're just not strong tanks. Maybe the best is the tier 9, I think, maybe tier 8. But they're just not great tanks, so I think you're going to get ripped apart if you're a new player. Yet you have armor, and the reason you need armor is because you're going to make a lot of mistakes when you're a new player. So if you have the ability to bounce some crazy shots without doing much, that really helps you stay alive longer. It allows you to do more damage. It allows you to win more. So I am considering that. Okay. That's why I have also not chosen the Progetto line, because they don't really have much armor. And these two tanks are absolutely atrocious, in my opinion. They're just very, very weak tanks in their tier. I mean, yeah, you can play them, but they're not fun. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to lose a lot. And that's never good. So which tech tree lines did I choose here? Well, I went with the 60 TP line. The only weak link in here is really the tier 7. I guess it's just not quite as strong tier for tier. It's okay, but that's the only one that's the weakest link. And the other line I'm going to go for is the Minotaur line. This is an interesting line because you start off with a non-turreted TD and then you move into turreted TDs. But these are tank destroyers in name only. Play them more like a heavy. Move to the front. We'll go down into details as I count them down. So what else did I choose? Well, naturally I went with 2 Soviet tech trees, and I went with, surprisingly, the Object 268. Why? Very consistent line. Yeah, okay, I admit they don't have the most armor, but the playstyle is easy. Snipe, sit at the back. That's your job. Because you don't have that much armor, people don't expect you to bounce a lot of shells. They expect you to hit the enemy tanks. So, these guns do hit hard, and you can have very good games just by sitting at the back of the map. So, I'm going to go with that one. And I was wondering which tank line to choose here. The IS-7 line, IS-3 is a shell of what it used to be. There are a lot of tanks that overshadow it. It's okay, but I just don't think it needs a buff. I think it really needs some love. Come on, Wargaming. Used to be such an awesome tank. IS-8, I don't think it's a carry tank for most players. They're going to struggle with it. So I'm also going to skip that one. So it's not the IS-7 line. I'm going to go with the IS-4 line. That's my choice. Yeah, the KV-3 is not the strongest tank, but it does have armor. You will bounce some shots, especially from tier 6, for sure. Against tier 8, you're going to struggle, especially if you're a new player. Make sure you choose the right gun. Which gun should you choose? Check my review of it. I've done 2 reviews. One when I said it was in my top 5 worst tier 7 tanks, but then I said I was wrong in my review of it. So go and check that out, and I think that tank might surprise you. KV-4, you're going to get a lot of bounces, especially newer players don't know how to pen this, so you can just kind of walk all over them, although good players will be able to kick your butt, but still. ST1, very solid tier 9, and IS-4, still a solid tier 10. Lost a bit of its mojo, though. In the German line, I chose 2 as well. I mean, the Mouse got tons of armor in this line. This is a bit of a weakest link here, the tier 6, although I like it. But I just don't think newer players are going to know how to use it or angle these tanks. Use them or angle them well enough to be able to bounce good shots. So you're basically going to take a ton of damage and you're going to struggle. So I'm skipping that. The lines I went with, I wanted to go with the E50 line, but there's just too many weak links. I mean, tier 6 is okay. Tier 8 is down at the bottom of tier 8, and E50 is a little bit weak. And it's a little bit more speed, I think. Then I would put it higher on my list, but no. And of course, these guys have no armor, so skip those immediately. So what did I go with? I went with the JPPZ line. Why? Well, tier 6 has got good DPM. Not the greatest armor, and it's tough to manufacture shots, but just snipe at the back. J-Panther, decent armor, decent speed, great gun. Yeah, it can bounce a few shots. Solid tank. J-Panther 2, go with this one. It's definitely the better choice. Fast. Again, snipe at the back, and then move in later. These 2 tanks are the slow beasts. I don't like them because they don't have turrets in the sense, but at the back, you can do a heck of a lot of damage, and that's what you're told to do in those tanks. So, yeah. I mean, maybe you can push in on this with this tank, but I don't know. For newer players, just snipe at the back. So what's the other line I went with? I went with the E100 line. Very solid line. Yeah. Some real standouts. The E75 was such a great tank. I don't know if it still is today, but it's definitely solid. Tiger 2, also very solid. So, lastly, we go to the American line, and I chose 2 from here, and I went with definitely the E4 line. Yeah, absolutely. They've got armor, especially in these three. Their guns are solid all the way through. You just got to adjust from speed to armor, which is a little bit of an iffy thing for me, but still, the Hellcat is such a standout in tier 6, so I'm going to say, yeah. You can snipe with these tanks if you want, although I don't recommend you do it with these three. Push forward. And lastly, I'm going to go with the E5 line, surprisingly enough. Yeah, the M103 is not as strong as it really should be. I think it needs a little bit of love. You don't see them played much because they're just kind of forgotten. But still a decent tank, and one I think new players can do decently in. So, of those tech tree lines, which do you think I put in 8th place? Any guesses? Coming in at number 8, I went with the JPPZ line. I mean, it's got armor here, but they've got no turrets. A little bit tricky for newer players to get used to, but just sit at the back, find a bush, snipe. That's your strategy. I'm telling you, you'll do well. Okay, if you just do that. And likewise, number 7 has got to also be the tank destroyer line, the Object 268. Why? No turret again. So that limits your playstyle. But a very easy tank line. I think you'll do a lot of damage from here on in. Not much to do. Just get in a position, snipe. Yeah, you're going to lose, but you're going to do damage. Okay? So if you're a new player, you're not really going to know the best positions, but if you sit at the back, I guarantee you'll be able to do a decent amount of damage. Coming in at number 6, what did I choose for my number 6 line? I went with, yes, the E5 line. The E5 line is a good starter line. Why? The T29 is a great tank for tier 7. T32 has been buffed recently. A solid tank. Go hull down and you're golden. M103, decent, but it's just it's lost a little bit of its love, but the gun is solid. Speed, solid. Gun, solid. You know, it's just an all-rounder kind of thing. And the E5, it's an all-rounder. You can play with the meds, you can play with the heavies. The penetration on the Pramo is great. Yeah, I would say this is a great starter tech tree line. Maybe one of the best, but it's not my choice. But I think it's lost a little bit of its love. But still, a good tech tree to grind if you're a new player. Coming in at number 5. You thought I was going to choose that, did you? Nope. The answer is I'm going with the IS-4 line. Yeah, I'm going to put this slightly higher than the E5 line. The IS-4 will get some crazy bounces. ST1 will bounce more than the M103. The armor is just tough to get through in KV4. So, yeah. And the KV2, although it doesn't have armor, the dirt gun is a heck of a lot of fun. So I think it's a good starter line. Just load HE on this. Just, who cares if you don't do a ton of damage? It's okay. So that's my number 5. Coming in at number 4, I'm going to go with the Minotauro line. Yeah, the standard, the CC64 is awesome. All these tanks are strong, but in the right position, this is just godly. They have all the same weaknesses, pretty much these 4. Is they're a little bit slow, and traverse is a little bit weak. So get around them, and they will struggle to pick you off. But they are decently strong tanks all the way through. I would definitely think that even a new player can do decently well in them. Just don't get too overly aggressive, I guess, I would say. Coming in at number 3. What do you think it is? Gonna go with the E4 line. Yeah, I think I would have put this higher, except that you have to change from like no armor, a little armor, to lots of armor and no speed. So that variation is a bit of a tough thing, I think, for newer players. But still, I think all these tanks are solid. Maybe the T25 is the weakest for newer players, but every tank, I think, can do the business. Yeah, solid. E4 got buffed recently. It is a very, very, very solid tier 10, maybe one of the best right now. Definitely take it out if you've got it. T30, still a classic. So, now we're down to the last 2. What did I go with? Number 2, I went with the 60 TP line. Why? Well, I love the 60 TP. I love it. 50 TP, very solid tier 9. This is a standout in tier 8, one of the top 10 tanks, I think. This is actually a very solid tier 6, maybe top 5, I think. Could be wrong, maybe top 8, whatever. But this is a weak link here. It's just not very good. It's not very enjoyable. Yeah, it's a bit of a weak link here. So that's why I had to downgrade this line. It could have come in first. So, have you figured out what my favorite line is for newer players? Yep, That leaves only one choice, the E100 line. The E100 line has no weakness. I mean, this used to be absolute trash. I mean, the worst tank in the tier, bar none. It was a heavy that couldn't do heavy stuff. Bounce shots, no. Gun, pen, no. I mean, it was horrible. But they buffed it a while back, and it became godly. It's still a very, very solid tier 6 tank. Tiger 1, good tank. It's powerful. It can bounce a few shots. Just protect your lower glacis, you know, the front part of your tank, the lower part, and you should be able to do fine. I mean, yeah, you will get penned if you turn to the side and stuff like that, but just face your enemy, angle slightly, and you should be fine. Tiger 2 got buffed a while back, thank God, because it used to be horrible. IS3 used to outshine it. Now it's the complete opposite. The Tiger 2 is the standout in the tier. Frontally, I mean, if you're facing this tank, I mean, a lot of tanks can't even pen it. I mean, tier 7 tanks, you just bounce all day long. Yeah, so it's a bruiser in tier 7 and 8. E75, still one of my favorites in the game. Very, very solid, agile for a heavy tank, really. I mean, 35, 38 kilometers per hour, I think. But it feels good. It really does. So I think this is a standout in the line. And the E100, yeah, okay, maybe you're going to get penned because of the flat size and things like that, and it's not the fastest tank, so you can't get out of trouble. But the gun is so intimidating. 640, load HE 1,000 sometimes. I mean, or 920 or something like that. I forgot what it is. Boom. I mean, people are scared of you. That intimidation factor alone is bonus points. So, yeah, this is my line for newer players if you really want to start out with something. However, as I said, I think this tank line is a little bit slow. So, yeah, you might not really know how to use that speed. So in some ways, I might say the E5 line would be a better choice for you just because it's a faster tank line. It allows you to get closer to the front, faster, get into better positions sooner. But I just think that this tech tree line is just so strong overall. Without really doing much, you're going to bounce some shots, especially from lower tier tanks. I mean, only good players will be able to pen you, or if they're using Pramo easily. I mean, bad players are just going to struggle all day long. Just face them, just don't turn around and show your back to them. You're going to get a ton of bounces. So, yeah. Those are my top 8 tech trees that I think I would recommend for newer players. Some of these tech tree lines are great even for pros, but I just think these tech tree lines are strong. They are. And you're not going to be pulling your hair out or grinding your teeth because they have such sucky tanks, such as, for example, like the Panther 2, which is nightmarish in tier 8, or, for example, the SU 101, the 263 line. I mean, no gun depression. It's so hard to manufacture shots if you don't know where you're going on which maps. Likewise, where is it? Yeah, Chinese tanks. I mean, yeah, they have no gun depression, like 2 degrees, 3 degrees. I mean, they've been buffed recently, 5 degrees, I think, but they used to be absolutely atrocious. 3, I think, 4. Ugh, it's so hard to manufacture shots. So that means you've got to put yourself in bad positions. So anyway, I don't want to waste any more time. I've got stuff to do. You have too. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, well, comment below. Tell me why you did not like it. Of course, please sub, tell your friends, share this video. Help me out. Help me out. I'm working hard here for you guys. That's all I got for you. I'll see you next time. Snugs on Blitz. Out.